October of 1748, a Virginia plantation. Owner unlocked his strongbox and discovered that more than half his fortune had vanished. Overnight, no lock was broken, no servant had fled, no fire had touched the house. The keys had never left his body. And yet $261 sterling simply no longer existed, as if the money itself had decided to disappear. 3 months earlier, that same man had made a single purchase he believed would guarantee his prosperity for life, an enslaved man with 6 fingers on each hand. Neighbors whispered that the curse arrived the moment the man crossed the plantation gate. Ledgers began changing without explanation. Transactions, the master remembered, clearly were written differently in his own handwriting. Paid debts resurfaced, buyers denied agreements, and the plantation's once stable fortune began unraveling thread by thread. The enslaved man was called Silas. No surname, no recorded origin. Just a body marked by 12 fingers, an anomaly some cultures called divine, others demonic. To Thomas Hargrove, owner of a 300-acre tobacco plantation in King William County, Virginia, those hands were a sign sent by Providence itself. 12 was the number of apostles, the number of months in a year, a number of completion, perfection. Within weeks of Silas's arrival, Thomas became convinced that his fortune was no longer obeying ordinary rules. Money vanished while still recorded as present. Records changed without signs of tampering. Orders were given and later forgotten, and every loss seemed to deepen. Thomas's belief that forces beyond reason were now at work inside his own house. What made the story terrifying wasn't superstition. It was consistency. The locks remained sealed. The handwriting remained his. Witnesses swore the same story. And when the study finally burned, destroying every ledger and account, local magistrates found no evidence of theft, fraud, or foul play. Only one detail stood out. The fortune began to disappear after the 6-fingered man arrived. And what history never resolved is whether Silas brought ruin to the plantation, or whether Thomas Hargrove's obsession with signs and omens slowly erased his own reality. By the middle of the 18th century, King William County, Virginia sat at the edge of prosperity and paranoia. Tobacco had made the region wealthy, but that wealth rested on fragile ground. Credit, weather, and reputation. A single bad harvest or whispered accusation could destroy a man faster than fire. Planters lived with ledgers as much as they lived with land, measuring their worth not in coin alone but in trust. Thomas Hargrove had inherited his plantation in 1739, a modest estate along the Pamunkey River, surrounded by marshland and slow-moving fog. The house was built of brick, unusual for the county, meant to signal permanence in a world that rarely offered it. Inside, the air smelled of ink, damp wood, and cured tobacco leaves. Outside, enslaved laborers worked from before dawn until the cicadas fell silent at night. Superstition was not an oddity in colonial Virginia. It was routine. Planters consulted almanacs before planting, feared eclipses, and interpreted birthmarks as omens. Ministers warned from pulpits that God communicated through signs hidden in nature and the human body. In this world, coincidence did not exist, only messages waiting to be understood. Thomas Hargrove took these beliefs seriously. He recorded dreams alongside crop yields. He noted unusual weather patterns in the margins of his account books. When livestock were born deformed, he fasted and prayed. His fear was not poverty, it was missing a warning. In the summer of 1748, tobacco prices fell sharply across the colonies. Credit tightened. Debts grew heavier. Hargrove's fortune was still intact, but only barely. Neighbors began selling land. Some fled west, others vanished under rumors of insolvency. It was during this moment of uncertainty that Thomas made a decision he believed would change everything. At a slave auction in Williamsburg, he encountered a man whose hands drew silence from the crowd. 6 fingers on each hand, perfectly formed, no scars, no deformity beyond the number itself. Thomas did not see a man in chains. He saw a sign. Thomas Hargrove was 46 years old when he purchased Silas, an age when ambition gives way to fear of loss. He was educated enough to read Latin scripture, but insecure enough to believe destiny could be read in numbers and flesh. His father had died bankrupt, ruined by a single failed tobacco season, and Thomas carried that memory like a wound. Every decision he made was shaped by the terror of becoming invisible, forgotten and poor. He was known in King William County as meticulous, even obsessive. He counted coins twice. He rewrote letters before sending them. He kept every receipt tied with twine and labeled by month. Yet beneath that discipline lived a man who believed control was fragile. That belief made him susceptible to omens. Silas remains far more difficult to reconstruct. He appears only 3 times in surviving records, always without a surname. Purchased in Williamsburg in July of 1748. Valued unusually high. Noted once by a parish clerk as the man with 12 fingers. Beyond that, the archives fall silent. What little can be inferred comes from witness accounts recorded years later. Silas was estimated to be in his early 20s, tall, quiet. He spoke little, but when he did, he chose his words carefully. Fellow enslaved workers later recalled that he avoided eye contact with Thomas, not out of submission but restraint. He worked without complaint, yet never hurried. Observed constantly, remembered everything. There were rumors even then. Some said Silas had been born in the Carolinas. Others claimed he came from the Caribbean, where beliefs about marked bodies ran deep. One witness testified that Silas once said his fingers were counting hands, though no one could agree on what that meant. To Thomas, those hands became an obsession. He requested that Silas serve inside the house rather than in the fields. He watched him write numbers in the dirt. He asked questions no enslaved man was meant to answer, about fate, about loss, about whether money could be protected from disappearance. The tragedy of this story lies in contrast. One man believed the world was governed by signs. The other understood how easily belief could be used. The changes began quietly, the way disasters always do. In late August of 1748, Thomas Hargrove noticed a discrepancy of 6 shillings in his accounts. He corrected it himself, assuming error, then corrected it again the following week when the number reappeared. By September, similar inconsistencies surfaced across multiple ledgers, small enough to dismiss, frequent enough to unsettle. Deliveries arrived late. Buyers denied prices Thomas remembered negotiating. A tobacco shipment recorded as paid in full returned marked unpaid. Each time the handwriting was unmistakably his own. Ink matched. Language matched. Even the pressure of the pen matched. Thomas began sleeping in his study, convinced that movement in the house explained what reason could not. Silas was moved closer, first to the hallway outside the study, then to the room beside it. Thomas claimed it was for convenience. Others noticed the fixation. He watched Silas's hands constantly, counting the fingers as if confirming their number might stabilize reality itself. By October, the losses accelerated. 30 pounds vanished from the strongbox without damage to the lock. Then another 40. Thomas accused servants. None confessed. No one fled. Fear replaced routine. Work slowed. Whispers spread across the plantation that something had followed Silas home. Thomas began asking dangerous questions. He demanded Silas explain whether his hands brought luck or took it away. Witnesses later recalled Silas responding calmly, saying only that numbers do not steal, they reveal. The answer enraged Thomas, who heard accusation where none was spoken. As weeks passed, Thomas stopped trusting memory. He reread ledgers obsessively, unsure which version of events was real. Each correction created new contradictions. Each attempt at control deepened the collapse. His belief hardened into certainty. The fortune was obeying laws he did not understand, and Silas was the center of them. By November, Thomas was isolated. Creditors circled. Neighbors kept their distance. And inside the house, a man who once believed order ruled the world began to act as though it never had. What he didn't realize was that the more he searched for meaning, the easier he became to manipulate. The truth did not arrive as a confession or a single discovery. It emerged in fragments, buried in testimony, recorded years later when the plantation no longer existed and Thomas Hargrove was no longer alive to defend himself. What those records reveal is not a curse but a pattern. Silas had been taught numbers long before Williamsburg. That much is clear from a deposition given by a former overseer in 1761, who recalled seeing Silas calculate sums faster than men who could read. He understood credit, not just coin. He understood that wealth in colonial Virginia lived on paper, memory and trust, not in metal locked away. Thomas unknowingly gave him access. He asked Silas to copy figures, to carry notes, to sit silently while accounts were reviewed. The 6 fingers made Thomas believe he was observing something supernatural, not something deliberate, and belief created blindness. Silas did not steal in the way Thomas imagined. He altered perception. A number repeated aloud became accepted as true. A rewritten figure was trusted because it matched expectation. Minor discrepancies forced Thomas to correct his own books, overwriting reality himself. Each correction erased certainty. Each doubt made the next change easier. Witnesses later described Thomas dictating numbers aloud while Silas listened, never touching pen or paper. Yet afterward, those same numbers appeared altered in ink. Thomas believed forces beyond him were acting. In truth, stress, sleep deprivation, and obsession were doing the work. The fortune did not vanish overnight. It dissolved through renegotiated debts, reversed credits, and delayed payments Thomas authorized while trying to stabilize his accounts. By the time the strongbox was found light, the money had already been spent chasing order that no longer existed. The final act was the fire. Thomas claimed it was accidental, but parish records note it occurred days after creditors requested full accounting. Every ledger burned. Every proof of manipulation disappeared. Silas was sold south shortly afterward. No charge was ever filed. No theft proven. The master who feared a curse had destroyed himself trying to escape one. And the man with 6 fingers had only needed patience, understanding, and belief to do it. By the spring of 1749, the Hargrove plantation was finished. Creditors seized livestock first, then land. Tobacco fields once worked by dozens fell silent, choked with weeds. Thomas Hargrove was forced to sell parcels of his estate to neighbors who had quietly waited for his collapse. Within a year, the brick house that symbolized permanence stood nearly empty, its windows boarded, its reputation in ruins. Thomas did not recover. Court records show repeated petitions for extensions on debts that no longer existed in written form. Without ledgers, his claims meant nothing. He was described by one magistrate as confused, agitated, and inconsistent in recollection. The man who once believed himself chosen by signs now insisted he had been punished by them. Silas vanished from the historical record after his sale in early 1749. No bill of sale survives. No plantation inventory lists him by name again. In a system obsessed with documentation, his disappearance is striking. Some historians believe he was sent to the Carolinas. Others suspect the Caribbean. Wherever he went, he carried no recorded wealth, no paper trail, and no accusations. The story did not end with Thomas's ruin. For years afterward, neighbors spoke in lowered voices about the danger of obsession. Ministers used the fire as a sermon example, warning that God's signs were not tools to be exploited. The idea that belief itself could undo a man lingered uneasily in the county. By 1760, the Hargrove name no longer appeared in tax records. A family erased not by theft or war, but by certainty turned inward. What remained was a cautionary tale whispered in taverns and kitchens, that the greatest losses come not from what is taken, but from what a man convinces himself to surrender. No curse was ever proven, only consequence. What remains of the Hargrove story is not the mystery of missing money, but the clarity of its lesson. In a world governed by paper, memory, and belief, reality was never as solid as Thomas Hargrove assumed. His fortune did not disappear because of magic, nor was it stolen by force. It unraveled because trust in reason gave way to obsession with signs. Colonial America was filled with men like Thomas, wealthy, fearful, convinced that God spoke through hidden patterns. Almanacs guided planting. Birthmarks shaped destinies. Numbers carried moral weight. In that environment, superstition was not ignorance. It was structure. And when that structure cracked, collapse followed. Silas remains unnamed beyond a single word in the archives. No portrait survives. No voice recorded in his own words. Yet his presence exposes a deeper truth about power. He understood that systems built on belief are vulnerable not to strength, but to suggestion. He did not need violence. He did not need theft. He needed patience and the willingness of another man to doubt himself. This story forces an uncomfortable question. How many historical mysteries are simply the aftermath of fear masquerading as fate? How often do we blame curses, conspiracies, or unseen forces rather than confronting the fragility of human judgment? The Hargrove plantation is gone. The land has been divided, renamed, and forgotten. But the pattern remains. Whenever belief overrides evidence, someone pays the price. So ask yourself, was Silas a manipulator? Or a survivor navigating a brutal system using the only tools available to him? Was Thomas a victim of deception or of his own certainty? If stories like this matter to you, subscribe for more untold histories buried beneath myth and fear. Comment below, what state are you watching from? And tell me, do you think belief creates reality or destroys it?